Good day, everyone. I'm Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker and our success coaching training program. Thank you for joining us today for a special webinar focused on learning and development in customer success. This seems high. Let me move this down a little bit. This event is brought to you by Success Coaching, the world leader in customer success professional development training with nearly 18,000 students globally on our platform. Our programs are available in a variety of formats, from self-paced online learning to virtual instructor-led boot camps. We're now accepting registrations for all of our virtual instructor-led programs through the end of the year, including our fall 12-week coaching program being offered in partnership with the University of San Francisco, launching in mid-September. To find out more, at successcoaching.co. Ashley's going to go ahead and drop a link into chat. Now, this is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic that's relevant to customer success. And as with all of our webinar series, regardless of the company that you work for, the scope of your role, or the sizes of the customers you or your teams deal with, we aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to you. The schedule for all of our upcoming events can also be found at successcoaching.co. Click on the events tab at the top of the page to find out more. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is recorded and we'll be posting a replay along with the transcription on our website probably towards the end of this week, if not early next week. We will be taking questions later on during the webinar, so please don't be shy. Use that Q&A button found at the bottom of your screen to ask or upvote a question. We're also broadcasting on LinkedIn Live, and we've got our friend Tracy monitoring that feed. So if you have questions and you're watching on LinkedIn Live, post them and they'll be relayed to us. Also, please keep all commentary to the chat window. Questions to Q&A, commentary to chat window. Today we've invited a little outside the norm. I normally invite 3 people. We got a lot of really great stuff to talk about. A lot of really great people to share their perspective. So I've invited 4 panelists to join me for this roundtable discussion about the importance of training your customer success team. These are people who are great at their craft, and we ask them to share their experiences and their perspectives. So without further ado, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves to you all, talk a bit about who they are and what they do, and let's get started as usual in alphabetical order with Greg.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. So my name's Greg Nass. I manage a customer success team for premium services at Recorded Future. We do threat intelligence. I've been with Recorded Future for about 4 years now. Prior to that, I was a security practitioner within the Naval Nuclear Labs and the Air Force. Kind of a jack of all trades, but I've been doing customer success in some form throughout my entire career. It's been focused on the customer experience. I'm from Pittsburgh, so if we have any Steeler fans, nice to see you.
Pittsburgh, wow! You guys have got a rough road back post Big Ben.
Yeah,
but good luck with that, says the 49er fan. Greg, thanks for joining us. Julia, you're next.
Hi, everyone. My name's Julia. I work for a chemical manufacturer in the Bay Area. I do operations, but we are a small headcount of a company, so we all wear multiple hats. So very involved in customer interactions day to day with a team of 2 other people who live internationally. So really was a unique opportunity to take part of this course. Prior to this role, though, I do have 10 years in retail experience. So customer success has always been part of my story.
I love that. So it's been part of your ethos for a long time.
Yeah. Important for my success as well.
Yes, that's awesome. Yeah, that's how I came into it. You know, I came into services and customer success, and I always had that ethos of, hey, we've got to make sure the customer's getting value, that they're getting something out of this. It's a great mindset, and it will continue to serve you well in these roles. Thanks, Julia. Lee, you're up.
All right. Well, hello, and I'm Lee Roque. I've been in the software space for about 20 years. I've started off, actually currently I'm in my new role. I've only been here 2 months, but I have 30 CSMs globally that I'm working to align around a training plan. Prior to my current new job, I was a chief customer officer at a business intelligence company for about 8 years, where I got to work with the success coaching team. Similar story. Been in the kind of CX game for a very long time. So very focused on either developing programs to make customers the best they can be with the services that I've worked for with other companies, or learning to improve the experience for the team internally. So super excited to be here today.
Awesome, Lee. Thank you. And by the way, you got a little max headroom kind of look there. You keep stopping and starting.
I'm in a very small box.
Yeah. So. I realize you're in a small box, and if it continues to and you're hiccuping a little bit, your audio, so you may want to turn off the video at some point, but I'll let you know. All right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. And then last but not least, our friend Vijay.
Hey, I'm Vijay Mehrotra, and I'm a professor of business analytics at the University of San Francisco's Business School. It's a little bit of a roundabout story as to how I got involved with customer success, and it's a full circle. I started out, my academic training was in applied mathematics, and I spent about 12 years working full-time in the world of business analytics and machine learning. And in that process, we developed a practice implementing complex machine learning based systems. And eventually I became vice president of operations at a client and ran all of our implementation team. And I was very frustrated with the mindset that our company had, that when implementation was complete, the customer was all set. Because it felt in those days, and particularly with complex technology, that when the implementation was complete, the journey was really just beginning. And so I left all that. I thought I was done with the software industry and became a business school professor. But about 5 years ago, when we redesigned our MBA program, I had a group of former students that had all gone into customer success. And they explained what customer success was to me, and it immediately resonated because of my experience with implementation in a previous life. And so we've been training our MBA students for 5 years in helping them launch careers in software as a service and customer success. And now I've started, and as we were talking about before the call, I've started to pay a lot of attention to the analytics and operations analysis associated with customer success businesses. So I'm thrilled to be here to talk about education, learning, and development of customer success teams.
Awesome. Thanks, Vijay. I had a similar path, right? I came in through services and had that same attitude of, hey, there's something wrong here if we're done once the implementation is done. But back in the day, on-prem, nobody freaking cared. Well, they were stuck with us, whether they liked us or not, right? And they were paying 20%, 22%, 25% maintenance, right, on top of that. So even if they waited the 5 or 6 years for the investment to be depreciated, they're still stuck with us, right? And even though that's the wrong attitude to have, that's the way companies rolled. But now with subscription as a service, it's a must-have, right? The subscription economy has driven this need to make sure that our customers are constantly getting value, even though we should have been doing that right from the start. But anyways, that's a completely different webinar topic. So let's not go down that rat hole. Once again, though, we all appreciate your time today. So let's get to the topic. So to get things started, I wanted to kind of survey my guests about the decision-making process they went through to spend the time and money for learning and development for their customer success teams. What motivated you to do so? What considerations did you make? And how did you propose the idea to invest in yourself and or your team to those that needed to approve the budget spend?
Yeah, I would say for my company, like I said before, we're small headcount, but a global presence. And we're at a transitional point in the growth of the business. And at the beginning of the year, we talked about laying some foundational blocks that as we grow, we can continue to have the same success we have at this level, if we doubled in size, if we tripled in size, what do we need to do to lay those foundational blocks with our current team so that we can continue and grow and make sure we're very successful? And so this was just kind of one of those perfect timing situations to get our entire team aligned. As far as the spend, I think that there's a cost associated with any type of transition, and there's a cost of losing customers, and there's a cost of stumbling as you're trying to grow. And I would say that's a greater cost than the cost of investing in your employees and taking care of that. And I think that our company really prides itself on investing in their employees at the beginning and not having to take care on a cost of upsetting a customer or having to go back and relearn a new skill.
And I love that. I love that attitude that your company's taking. I want to point out once again, especially the people who are listening, that, Julia, perfect example, chemical manufacturer. This is a non-SaaS subscription, type of business where we typically think of customer success. I posted something on LinkedIn last week about this very thing. We're talking a chemical manufacturer. And it's not about the product. It's about the attitude. It's about, hey, it's cheaper to keep our customers. Let's make sure that we're getting value. Customer success for all. Customer success for whatever it is you're doing. There's no reason to not be investing in keeping your customers. Lee, You got something to add?
Yeah, no, I was just going to mirror what Julia said. And just, again, when you start looking at the hard numbers of what it costs to acquire and retain, I think a lot of companies are spending a ton of money just to make sure their customers have the tools they need. But then a lot of times it's the last place you look at to gaining the most efficiency and the ability to earn that trust of your customer base is by investing in your people. And so I think for me, when I was looking at, rolling out, a 30-person training program globally, there is definitely a cost there. But for me, it was, when you're looking at trying to build a scalable, predictable, and repeatable business, it starts with being consistently managing on the customer journey, and then just laying on the revenue operations below that, and it just makes sense. So it was an easier sell, when you look at the hard costs of a couple of churns versus retention, it makes it easy.
Yeah, that's something we get into discussions with prospects about. This is going to cost X amount of dollars, and usually our response is if their average deal size is high four figures, we're talking sub 10 grand, high four figures north, and up. If we can teach your folks one thing, right, that helps them save one customer, huge return on your investment. And that's how you need to look at just education in general. It doesn't matter whether it's from us or somebody else, but it's when you take into account the value, the return on the investment. Return on investment can be huge for this sort of thing. Greg, what about you? What went into your kind of your decision-making process around setting aside the money or getting the authorization to spend the money on doing training?
I tell you, return on investment, right? That is, we invest, our training program, when we onboard employees, is approximately several months long, depending on how long they can absorb the information or how quickly they can absorb it. So retaining those employees is just crucial because we have a significant investment in them. Now, while I didn't dictate my training budget, it was dictated for me. I encourage my team to just take full advantage of it. Why would you not? And I do that primarily through example, right? I take training. I took the Success Hacker CSM3 just this year. And I went back and I shared some of the golden nuggets with my team and some of the key takeaways and just really encouraged them. And I really encourage them, just use that training budget as much as you can. It's so important because not only is it a return on investment for us, right? We may prevent some churn, which is money, right? And we may learn some techniques that are going to allow us to focus in on upsell opportunities, right? That we can take to the account management team. So highly encourage that budget, that training budget. It's always good. Always take away a couple golden nuggets.
And VJ, from the the university perspective, what was the motivating factor or factors behind you bringing this whole customer success topic to the administration and making it part of your curriculum?
Well, I think when we redesigned our MBA program, there was a heavy emphasis on serving our business community here in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. And it became really clear from talking to a number of my former students that customer success was a great entry point into the technology field for students, because you had to learn the product, you had to learn the domain, you had to learn to work effectively with customers. And once you develop those skills, what we had seen was in our former MBA students who spent a year or two in customer success would either become customer success leaders or really sought after for roles in product, roles in sales, and sales engineering as well. So we felt it was a great opportunity to expose our MBA students to cutting edge opportunities to get into the tech industry from the ground up in a way that they can really learn the business. And although you don't need an MBA to be a successful CSM, I've seen so many CSMs that are so intelligent, so self-trained and well-trained through training programs. We find our students really are attractive candidates for enterprise software companies that have amount of complexity and touch a lot of the organization. And so we feel like this has been a great mechanism to get our MBA students into really interesting roles within the tech industry.
Well, okay, and let's kind of that's great, and I think that's a great lead into my next question for the group is what are some of the key skills that customer success managers or just customer facing individuals need to have or need to hone in order to be effective in these types of roles?
I'll jump in.
Jump in, Lee.
I think there's the standards, which everybody's, I'm sure, got on their list of, listening, empathy. But I think one of the things that, I've noticed, and one of the things that I thought I got out of having more of that group training is really understanding that, I think that getting to understand what is actually happening at the customer face, like what is actually driving their business, what is actually happening for them, make it about them. And asking, having the skills to basically ask questions in a way where you're getting them to talk more than you are talking, that opens up to me the first kind of phase of being that trusted advisor. So I think understanding how to ask the questions, listening, of course, and how to actually challenge the customer to think deeper about their business or what their outcomes are that they're trying to achieve. So I think for me, that's like the thing that I always have to kind of try and help the teams that I'm working with is understand the customer's problem in their business environment so you can help be that person that can help challenge them and solve that problem together.
Being able to listen is a critical skill in CSM. It really is. Yeah. I look for that all the time. And in fact, when we interview, I insert some questions just to see if they're listening, right? So totally agree with that. I also, I have to look for technical people because we do threat intel around cybersecurity and geopolitical events. And so I need technical people, which is very hard to find. It's challenging, but I look for people that are curious, people that like puzzles, and people that are interesting, right? People that can hold someone's attention and have a conversation, because a lot of times when we have our regular cadences with our clients, it's conversational at first. And then we get down into business, right? We have 30 minutes. Most of the time I'll use that first 15 minutes to have a conversation with my clients, and then we get down to business and you just build their trust that way. So I'm looking for really interesting, curious people.
We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should be listening twice as much as we're speaking. Right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think just to build off of that, I think it talks a lot about in the course in itself is just you need to find what your value is to your customer. So really understanding your own business, but that curiosity of listening and understanding your customer, how do you affect their lives, and always being able to approach from that mindset. It's not this black and white give and take. It's it is this curiosity, and you have to continue to build on that. And this course just, in every lesson that we learn, it's almost always brought back up. Like, what is your company's value, and how do you help your customer? How is your customer benefiting from any interaction with you?
So I want to first say I agree with everything that Julia and Lee and Greg have said. I want to add another dimension to this, and that is CSMs are on the front line for your company with what's going on with their customers. They have an extremely valuable perspective, as well as having the advocacy role for their customers. So I think another skill set is the ability to influence people within your own organization without any formal authority, but by being clear in your communication about what the issues are and what the implications are. And a lot of that influence without authority piece is a key element, both externally with your customers, but also internally with your own organization.
Yeah, influence without authority, being able to negotiate. And we're not talking about negotiating a deal, negotiating a sale, just negotiating the scope of an initial rollout, right? There's a lot of supplementary skills that people need to have that you don't necessarily think of right off the top of your head. I once proposed a negotiation course to somebody who had a support team that they were looking to train. And they said, well, they don't need to negotiate anything. I'm like, they're negotiating stuff every single day. Nearly every call, they are doing some form of negotiation.
Yeah,
so negotiating experiences, right?
We have to negotiate with the product team, right, for feature upgrades.
Yeah,
and so we actually have to make that sell for the client.
Yeah,
so that's a critical skill for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I was talking about enterprise CSMs as actually trying to conduct two orchestras at the same time: the organization of their client and their own organization.
And their own organization, yeah, exactly. Well, and that's why I like the point you made about how you have some MBA students that have made really good customer success managers because they've gotten the exposure to those other areas of the organization. Because internally, and we've talked about this before in other webinars as well as in some of our courses, talk about how the customer success manager, somebody in a customer success role, customer-facing role, is interacting with more organizations internally than anybody else inside your organization. They're talking to finance, they're talking to legal, they're talking to engineering and product and sales and marketing. And that's why you're starting to see there's been some promotions of chief customer officers into CEO roles. The CEO of HubSpot was formerly their chief customer officer. So
loving that trend.
Yeah, it's a great trend, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
Just a reminder to those listening: if you have questions, please use your Q&A button. We will, if there are questions, we'll allocate some time towards the end of our webinar for questions. So have any of you, so Lee, Julia, Greg, Fiji, I would love to get your take on this as well, but have any of you taken things that you've learned in a CS course and applied them the next day in your role, or that day in your role?
Yeah, man, I went through the level 1 CSM course with all my CSMs, and there were just some amazing nuggets that you can just next day launch. And for me, it was the notion of success planning and just really getting from the first touch working with, and I was as chief customer officer, was in a special role where I could influence the sales process and onboarding and everything to do with the customer journey. But being able to get the organization, especially the team, to focus on putting together the plan, made sure that we had something to lean on as we took the customer through their journey. So that was probably the biggest thing that I walked away going, okay, I can see how to put all the pieces of the puzzle together now.
Yeah, I saw, because Lee, you and your team took you took the level 1 and the level 2 cohorts, the 12-week programs, and I could see the kind of the wheels churning. It's like the lights popping off on top of everybody's head. Going, oh wait, that makes sense. I like this, And then hearing about, that's why I always say that the 12-week program is so exciting to me. It's my favorite product because I'm able to kind of go down that journey with you, and the next week, hey, we tried this and this is what happened.
Yeah.
And, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, that was the best thing. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Lee.
I was going to say that was the best part of it. Cause I mean, I think we've all had programs we've either been, self-guided where you're just reading a bag or a book and then answering tests. But your course, the way that to be able to sit with my whole team to go through it. I mean, we had hour-long sessions after each of the calls, just talking about the ideas, and we were able to hone things in and then come back and ask you. But I think the other biggest thing that we got out of just to be able to deploy the next day or that next hour was we weren't alone. Like every company, no matter how big you are, you're like what VJ said, you're dealing with the internal and you're dealing with your customers, and everyone's dealing with that same thing. So to be able to just feel like you weren't alone and when you could talk it out and everybody felt safe, that was amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. Greg, Julia, you're up.
Yeah, for sure. One of the big pieces for us that we were able to implement right away, I think it was the same week we were learning about onboarding, using that onboarding plan and layout of just kind of organizing and remembering everything you need to do to set up your customer from day one to make sure that they feel like you're as invested, that you've done some research about how your company's going to help them. And then vice versa, that they're kind of giving you that information and that relationship built off. And our team started using that right away. And then kind of just to build off what Lee said, it's just even like the language and the conversations that we were having in the course. It changed the way we were presenting ideas, changed the way we were communicating with our customers in real time, because we weren't alone. We could hear from other people how they were being successful, utilizing different tools, or maybe it was like a phrase that was introduced or anything like that. That's being able to be used right away. And because it's weekly, you're getting constantly reminded. And it's such a good like practice to start using it in the real time.
And I think, Julia, you also mentioned when we were doing our prep call on Friday, you mentioned that verbiage, that approach, that mindset also changed the way in which you were talking to your management.
Right. Yeah. So
your colleagues internally.
To not waste, there's a lot about the language about, what type of customer this is, how much time do we spend with this customer, what value add do we get? And all of that goes into how we're not wasting our time with leadership, and that we get right to the point and we get the outcome that we need. Like I'm dealing with, our top client. I will continue to get on these calls with them, but this is how much time it's going to give. Do you feel like this client, gives this out of us, and how much do we invest in that? Kind of really understanding who your customers are, segmenting them. That was really key, and teaching that skill, I think, was huge.
Awesome. Greg, what about you? What's the
for me, it was capacity planning. The capacity planning tool in that entire module that we took, I tell you, it was like a light bulb. I realized that I'm over capacity. My entire company is over capacity, and that we may not have done capacity planning in the past. But I was able to use that tool, look at my own calendar, right? And kind of look at the workload that I manage myself for right now, and get that in check, right? I was able to put, buffers before and after meetings, and put that through, because, there's post work that goes on after a client meeting. There's prep work that needs to happen. We need to have that time. And there's also thought work. I need time to think. I can't just go through my day, and I need that time to really just wrap my head around some of the problems and to come up with some solutions, right? And so now that I've done that capacity planning on my role and my job, I'll be rolling that out with my team and taking some of the tips and tricks that I learned. But we're also forecasting our hiring process for next year. And so I'll be taking the capacity planning tool to my leadership. And I think I'm going to have really good results and feedback from my team on that.
I know, Lee, you got all lathered up about the capacity planning tool, going as far as scheduling a call with me. I remember that.
Times, yeah.
Yeah.
No, honestly, I mean, that was, and I think, Greg, you nailed it on the sense of just, and I think Julia too, just again, where are you able to find efficiencies to put your plan together But I think a lot of us struggle with, the CSM, and I think this can happen in every company, tends to become the superhero role. And so everybody throws the CSM team in front of the problems when you really should be looking at your whole organization. But that capacity planning, I mean, that opened a lot up early on for me to go to, the CEO, CFO. As soon as you can start getting headcount based on numbers and facts versus emotion, it's a winner.
Yeah. I know how much of a data guy you are, VJ, how important that stuff is.
Yeah, I want to come back to something that Lee hit on, but Greg had really nailed around capacity. I actually think that there's so many CS teams running so lean that the consequence of that and the mathematics of it are pretty profound. That when you hit unexpected roadblocks, whether they're reactive things that your product has required you to do because customers are in trouble, or whether there are long internal process steps that you've got to face, all that has a much bigger negative impact on customers when your team is running really lean. And I think that to the points that all three of our panelists have made, the extent that you're able to have a conversation about capacity that is kind of reason and time-based. The other part of that puzzle is, in order to have that conversation, you need to do some pretty clear thinking about your customer journey. And that kind of will sometimes expose some things like, why is our product requiring that you can bring back as well? Because I think maybe the consistent thread through all this is thinking about your operations, not as a bunch of heroes, but as a system that touches outside parts of the organization as inputs and outputs.
Yeah, that's systems thinking. So it needs to be. It needs to be. You need to take a systems thinking approach to your customer journey, to the methodology that you want your teams to employ in order to guide that customer journey. And you always need to be thinking about, there are all of these, there's a lot of other people and a lot of other things and a lot of other organizations that play a role in delivering that, but also can be affected by how you lay things out. And to your point, VJ, when you're running really lean, there's no room for error, and those errors end up popping up all the time. So,
hey, Andrew, one more on that, just from the capacity planning and the coursework stuff. If you're running so lean, it's probably because you're spending more of your time trying to keep up with the internal business and just onboarding and the normal tasks of doing a CSM job. If you don't have the capacity, and Greg nailed this again, good job, Greg. If you don't have the capacity to actually be building proactive engagement, the things that you want your teams to be doing, you never feel like you're catching up or getting ahead. You're always just firefighting.
And firefighting is exhausting for everybody.
Oh.
It really is. So actually that leads to another question I had was, does investing in L&D play a role in employee retention from your perspective?
I would say like 100%. I think I kind of mentioned at the beginning, but one of the things that I know our company really prides itself on is this learning and development. You come into a company from varying experiences, but to make sure your team is like always on the same place and always come from the same ideas, giving them the same education is in ways that you can. Like a course like this will really set everyone up for success and make them feel confident in the decisions and even if it is the firefighting that they're doing every day. I can even say, there was a part of the course on, dealing with difficult customers, and the perspectives that came from that course of, think about how your customer's feeling. Those are basic kind of thoughts. The way the course addressed that, I think really did help, at least my team. And I think it helped a lot of the team just based on everyone's feedback during the course, that those kind of discussions really do help. You don't feel alone. And then everyone's kind of on the same basis of tools. You can't just give that in, a training program that's, this little training program that maybe your company provides. Like these specialized courses and the live discussions are so key to making us feel confident in our roles.
Yeah, I want to talk specifically about the live discussions as well. But Lee, Greg, VJ, anything to add to that? And I would be interested in hearing, VJ, from you from an educational perspective. If you have any insight into L&D playing a role in employee sat, but Lee, I know you put your whole team through it when you were at
Yellowfin.
At Yellowfin. Sorry,
Yeah,
there's so many companies in my head.
Company X.
Yeah, Company X, exactly.
Yeah, no,
did that play a role in keeping your people and keeping them happy?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I'm sure a lot of companies are doing this now, but I mean, kind of, I think through pre-COVID and through COVID, like we have pretty much a mandate now to make sure we're cutting out time to invest in our people. And I think anytime the company can show that they're actually investing time to allow you to self-develop, not only just courses maybe for business, but I think that adds to, everybody wants to be an expert. You know, you want to feel like, you know, you're not just the product, but how to do your job. And I think anybody who can invest in those two areas for people, you feel more value, you feel like someone's listening, you feel cared for. So I think it's 100% worth the time and energy. And it adds to the consistency of how you feel you can work. I mean, if you can turn around and go, Julia, I had this problem. Hey, we did that in the class. Well, here's how I took. Here's what we can do together. You have a common language you can build off of. So that's outstanding.
Yeah. And I know, Greg, you took it, even though you've recently been promoted to a leadership role, by the way. Once again, congrats on that. You were taking it as an individual contributor. How did you feel about it from, you know, your perspective as an individual contributor at the time that the company was willing to invest in you in your career?
You know, it does make you feel really good, because if they're going to make an investment in you, I'm going to pay that back. I want to invest in them and do the best I can. But I think Lee really touched on something, right? If we're getting trained and we understand how to do our job well, right, that's going to retain employees, because we know how to do our job, and we're going to be able to do our job in less time, so we can work smarter, not harder and longer, right? Researching, figuring things out. We already have those answers because we went and we did some training. So I highly encourage. I mean, you need that learning development for sure.
Well, I'm excited to put on my old guy hat for a minute here. In the course of my career, we've kind of gone from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where there was a huge amount of investment by larger organizations in their people because people stayed around a long time. And I feel like the pendulum swung really hard the other way. And we pushed responsibility for professional development and growth out to the individual in ways that didn't engender loyalty either way. And I think that to the point that all of our panelists have made around how does it feel for employees to be invested in, I think it's a pretty important message, particularly during this kind of post-COVID time, where we're seeing people leaving jobs where they don't feel appreciated at much higher number.
Yeah. There you go. Good call. All right. One last question about format, and then we're going to get to some of the questions from the audience. So we look at the different formats of training. You've got kind of the autonomous online learning. You've got the boot camp, right? Those 2-3 day intensive things. And then you've got like what we do, the 12-week kind of a coaching program. What have you seen? And I believe you've all taken a flavor of those, each of those. What have you seen to be the most effective? Not that I'm not saying that anything is not effective, but what do you find is the most effective out of those three modes?
I tell you, I've taken both. I took the boot camp, and then I took the 12-week session for CSM3. And I think I like the 12-week session better because it allows me to absorb that information and really understand it and learn it, right? And retain it versus a boot camp where essentially it's a download, it's a dump, and you're prepping for a test, and you get the test and you pass the test. And for me, it just takes me a little longer to retain that information, just how I learn. And I appreciate the conversation, and just really the time to think about what I absorbed, and have a whole week to kind of work on that and then bring that back to the group. I really like the 12 weeks better for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to second that. I thought the 12-week program, even though at first you're like 12 weeks, what? Being able to break it up into small segments and have time to do coursework and think about it, tick that box, but then to have the dialogue. And I mean, it's nice, Andrew, to have you there going, what do you think, Lee? Tell me, poking people, because some people need to be, once people got going, some people don't learn that way very well. But I think that the discussions that came out of just talking as a group were just, again, people helping people.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And it wasn't always about me asking questions. If you remember, it was about other people in the cohort, right? You're going through this training with, 15, 20 other people at the same time. So people are, hey, have you tried this? Have you thought about this? Oh, we did this at this last company, which is exactly, I don't want to be the one sitting there poking people. I want to kind of facilitate the discussion.
And I'm sure I talked too much that time too.
No, not at all. Julia, what about?
I would say this 12-week course, from our experience, we're doing a lot of different things all day, and having that dedicated hour a week to think strategically has almost implemented this new consistency that I find myself and my other peers that took the course with me also continuing to implement this 1 hour of strategy time a week to really pull yourself away and think critically about how we're going to better our customers. What are we doing to grow the business? And it's so different than just reading a book. I have other courses, even courses right now that I take that I just kind of read a book and take a test. And whilst it's good information, it's kind of more like a task to check off my list. Where this is just something that's a really thoughtful, you kind of have to participate, you have to engage, even to learn the information. It is more interactive than I even anticipated before I joined the class. And in a great way, it was a good feeling to feel like we were really engaging in that way for 12 weeks. And it also kind of like builds a habit of strategic thinking long term.
Yeah, awesome. And VJ, from a educator's perspective, I know there have been a lot of studies looking at the results of binge and purge learning versus grazing on the information and retention of that information.
Yes, couple of things. First, I want to echo everything that the panelists have said about the peer support and the opportunities to have those discussions, as all the educational research finds that to be extremely valuable. But there's another piece of the puzzle that I learned about 10 years ago, and it has changed everything I do as a teacher. And that is what the brain research is very clear on now is somewhere between 35 and 45 minutes, the information that's retained, whatever you've been doing for 35 minutes, after that 35 minutes is up, the lessons from that experience drop off a cliff. And I had no idea when I saw this data. It just amazed me. And I've restructured everything I do teaching wise so that we don't do anything for more than 20 to 30 minutes. And that there's a change. And I think the 12-week session where there's that constant interaction really keeps things fresh and lively and really maximizes the value of that instructional time.
Yeah,
I've had some really good experience with online learning, but I find that same thing, that somewhere around 30 minutes, my retention drops off a cliff from that.
Well, that's why we try to keep our online learning modules into like 5 to 7 minute sections. Every once in a while they go 10 minutes, but it's like I can take this, I can consume it, I could go walk away, I can come back. We follow the same type of mindset, whether you're doing autonomous learning or you're doing a live instructor-led training. We encourage people to pace themselves and chunk things up in different ways. We encourage people to take notes and review those notes within 8 to 12 hours of capturing the notes, all those things you want to do to retain. You're not taking a course like any sort of customer success course just to get a certification, like you said, Julia, just to check off, a box. This is the type of training that either can make or break your relationship with your customers, right? And that can make or break your success as a company. So it needs to be easy to consume, and people need to be able to retain that information. Let's address some of these questions because we got about 13 minutes left. Sil, thanks for the question. Sil asks, she had one upvote. By the way, if you want to upvote any of these questions, please feel free. They will move up the list. I start with upvotes first. As Greg mentioned earlier, training budgets are usually not dictated by customer success leaders. So what are your top 3 arguments to convince your organization to allocate a training budget to customer success? Well, I answer these questions all the time, but I would love to hear if any of my guests have any thoughts on this.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that I always gravitate back to a lot of the Gartner research, which shows, basically 73%, I think was the metric of all customer onboardings lead to, the number of customer onboardings done incorrectly lead to basically rev churn after the first whatever years. And it's like 73% because of the fact that the onboarding experience wasn't done correctly. So I always take those little snippets and build a model out saying, okay, for each of the key touch points along the customer journey, if our team was better educated to do this consistently, we could retain more business or grow more business or say no to bad business because we're all on the same page. So that I always kind of start, you got to numbers. The numbers is what's going to make people make decisions. So that's kind of where I start is pick apart your customer journey and then put the business case together around what the retention and ROI will be for that.
Yeah, awesome. That's kind of similar to usually what I pitch people, which is what's your average deal size? All right, what's your average deal size? And compare that to the investment. Right. And remember that it's not good enough to just cover your deal size. You want to 3x that, right? Your customer lifetime value, or it's not just enough. It's not just enough to cover your cost to acquire the customer. You want to 3x that, right? So it's that investment. If I can save the one customer with one thing that I've learned, it pays for itself. Julia, Greg, anything to add to that?
I'd have to totally agree with that. And also, I'd say we're going to work smarter, not harder, so we can do more in less time, right? So that's going to make me more valuable for the team.
Yeah, again, the smarter you work, the more time you have to spend the cycles with figuring out the more strategic things you want to do with your customer to get more value out of what you're doing for them. Julia?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of what Lee said too, bringing to their attention the cost of losing one customer. How does that compare to the cost of teaching somebody a skill that can be applied to multiple customers and retain multiple customers? I think companies can get that sticker shock when they first see like a cost of something, of course, but if you really break it down in something as simple as like, how much would it cost to lose one customer? Like, what about that in time and investment that we make for this customer of 6 months and then we lose them? It's like, this is a 12-week investment in a multitude of ways to grow that in multiple customers.
Exactly. 12. And that's that there's a, I'm sorry, Lee, you were going to add?
Oh, no, I think you're going to say this, but I think also too, instead of looking at, the retention piece, just think if you could take your customer base and you could grow them by 3% because you're doing better things of talking, listening, and driving value within, what are the percent of wallet opportunities that you're not talking about because your team doesn't know how to have those conversations, right. even that.
Well, back to your point about though, just onboarding itself, more times than not, churn is going to be the result of a bad onboarding experience.
Yep.
Right. So if I spend the time just focusing on onboarding, that one module, that one concept that is week 3, right? We talk about onboarding in week 3. If I can save one deal, right, it pays for itself. And this is kind of tangential. Catherine asks, how much time per week or per month should CS teams dedicate on training or upskilling? I mean, when as part of our coaching program, we kind of set this expectation that should probably allocate roughly 60 to 90 minutes per week for the content consumption and any homework, and then you got that hour for the coaching call. Is that about what you all are doing with your teams?
Yeah, it was about 2 hours. I mean, during the course, it was about 2 hours of education. And then post that, we take 2 hours of just strategic thinking, a week, just to kind of pull yourself back, block off your calendar, close your email, think really hard about where you're at with your customers that week and what you need from them. But yeah, 2 hours, it gets worked in pretty easily at that much.
Yeah, if everyone does the capacity planet and our capacity planning, once you go through the course, you realize how much time you're wasting. You can find 2 hours to invest. I mean, it really was about 2 hours because, like I said, we had right afterwards. I got everybody on a call because I was like, okay, let's talk about all the exciting stuff we just talked about. What can we do now or in 6 months? But what do we want to do to try to change? And I think just everybody being so excited about that, ideas just were coming out of left field. You're just like, wow, it's too many things. Okay, let's pick two.
Yeah.
Greg, you got anything to add? It looks like VJ, Greg, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing on internal training and external training that we're taking. 2 hours is about right per week, but you can do that in bite-sized pieces, right? So you can do 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, 15 minutes, and I don't know. My focus, that's about what I have. 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there. So that's a way to do it too. Yeah,
good point. Good point. Especially the way things are chunked up. I'm going to watch section 1, and I'm going to go back to get on a call. Then I'll watch section 2. That's what I did with all your material, Andrew, for sure. Yeah, you just need to kind of set the time aside, right? We were huge. We always we promote time boxing. Set those times aside for L&D and set a rule with yourself that they can't be deleted. They can only be moved. Remember, you're making an investment in yourself, and your company's potentially making an investment in you. So set the time aside to do it right. VJ, you got anything to add?
Yeah, the other thing I would add is outside of the context of coursework of the type that we're talking about here, I would encourage all CS leaders to allocate that same time regardless, and to engage with your product teams and your engineers and your sales engineers to come and spend a couple of hours a week with your CSMs on an ongoing committed basis. Just to our earlier point about how, you're entrusting your customer base and your revenue stream to these folks. Anything that the rest of the organization can do to put them in a better spot to deliver is paying back manyfold.
100%. One thing on that, because I think it's a really powerful one, back to the question about, what are some of the ideas? I think companies can get so focused on the acquisition of new stuff that they forget to look at the book of business. And if you're in a larger organization, you might have, an acquisition number of 10 million new customers a year, but we're sitting on $50 million of retention. And so using the big numbers and go, well, what's a 1% change on a $50 million book of business? That's substantial. So you can definitely find ways to carve out a 10 cents or 2 cents on the dollar to get some money to spend on your people.
Yeah. Good point. Catherine also asks, Greg, don't type an answer. We got to speak the answers. For company startups that are changing rapidly, launching new products, enhancing product, fast changing processes, what are the best methods for quickly upskilling CS teams without overwhelming them, but still having content with replay value?
So the answer I was going to type there. We treat our employees like clients, essentially, right? We onboard them, and through that onboarding process, we have a very structured onboarding process. And within 6 weeks, give or take a few, depending on the person, we can get them in front of clients. I think 6 weeks is pretty good to bring someone in and then get them client facing.
Yeah,
that's how we treat it.
Yeah, I would mirror that as a quick time. But I think doing a lot of the stuff that the success coaching program, the 12-week program, like small little groups getting together, talking about, whether it's what's happening this week or what's your risk accounts, that in quick engagement, is super important. And honestly, if you're to the question that was there, if you're quick and nimble and you're changing a lot, you do have to have a fundamental bit of a playbook to be like, these are our standards, and then make sure that everyone is on board when you're making those changes. Because it's great to be nimble and quick, but if you're not getting consistency and repeatability and predictability out of it, you're just going to find yourself in a fire drill soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And go ahead.
No, go ahead, Julia.
I was going to just say, like, kind of where my company was when we started this course was because we wanted to get to a place where we can evolve our business on a dime and we have fundamentals in place. And even a lot of things were rapidly changing whilst we were taking the course. And we were able to like continuously apply and grow our knowledge. Learning takes time, but this type of course does kind of help you evolve as the weeks go on. And those discussions, I know it wasn't just me, like there's other people in the cohort who were bringing up like, okay, my company just decided to do this, or I just started a new position. These are happening in the midst of taking the course. And I think it was still really applicable throughout the whole time.
We've just started up an enablement team to really just train employees on new product features that come out and get them up to speed quickly. Maybe that would help, Catherine.
Yeah.
Andrew, how important is your CS operations layer? No.
I want to just kind of to build on what all of these guys have said, that is in an environment where either product is rapidly changing or your customer base is evolving quickly, I think it's even more important to be having those conversations, simply because a lot of the wisdom about what your standard procedures should be is going to come from the CSMs themselves. What they've learned about what's working for particular use cases or particular customer verticals. And very often they'll be doing that learning in isolation unless there's a mechanism for that to be shared and standardized, and for those standards to improve and get solidified early on in a company's life cycle and product cycles.
Yeah, agreed. And I think one thing that's been really helpful for me is making sure that somebody's telling the story internally in the business unit of what's actually driving success and the roadblocks. Because if you can get the different department heads to be on that journey with you, if you're not telling the story, someone's going to tell your story for you. And so I think making sure that that's part of what you're doing is important.
Excellent. Catherine, thanks for the question. Greg, do me a favor, hit done on yours. We're pretty much at the end of our time. I just want to address two quick things here. Laney, partner success. We actually, the VMware partner success team is actually sending, directing their partners to our training program. So you might want to take a look at that. But partner success is just like customer success, except you're just training your partners to support your customers. And the better you train your partners to support your customers, the stickier you become. And then Louise actually directed a question at you here, VJ, which kind of piggybacks on something that you just said. My name is Louise. I work as a CSM for an ed tech in Brazil. VJ, from an educational perspective, we're having lots of success by adopting buddy strategies, encouraging all team members to teach new members. What are your thoughts on teaching on that type of teaching as a form of deep learning? It's something we promote. We, as part of our team subscription, which one of the things that we actually recommend teams do is buddy people up. Your thoughts from a educational perspective on that?
Oh yeah, I do a huge amount of that, both with my students and also in a corporate environment. When you buddy people out like that, they're able to communicate with each other really efficiently. And a lot of lessons can get learned much more quickly through that channel than they can through traditional kind of content delivery and digestion. And frankly, I think these discussion sessions in the 12-week classes really play some of that role. That it feels like I've heard consistently from students that have gone through success coaching on our platform at USF that, gosh, we got so much out of those discussions. And everybody here said that today too.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, listen, we're at the end of our time for today. I think it was a great conversation, but it's not what I think. It's what all of you think. So please let us know by posting your feedback on LinkedIn and tagging either myself or our guests or Success Coaching. I want to thank all of you for spending the time with us, for the ideas, thoughts, insights, and best practices that you've shared. One final note, great CS practitioners know they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. That's why we produce the content and the programs that we've created to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. We hope to see you again at our next event this Wednesday, August 17th, our Customer Success Leadership Roundtable at 11 a.m. Pacific, when we'll discuss how to go about determining the right tools for your CS team. Until then, make sure to make space for yourself and your mindset every single day, and have a great rest of your day, week, and month.